Everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Welcome. My name is Rob Dubin. I'm a gallery director here at the Museum of Fine Arts, and I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker today, Ana Iwataki. Ana is a cultural historian, writer, and curator based in Los Angeles, as well as a PhD candidate in comparative media and culture at the University of Southern California. Today she'll be speaking about the unique impact of Japanese American artist Matsumi Kanemitsu on downtown LA during one of its most consequential periods. Her in-progress dissertation, The View from Traction, Japanese American Artistic Practices in Downtown Los Angeles, draws from her work with artist Uyemura and the Matsumi Kanemitsu Archive and collection. Ana will speak for about 30 minutes, followed by a question and answer session, and I hope you'll stay and join us for some refreshments following the questions. I think we're ready to get started, so please join me in welcoming Ana Iwataki. Robin, thank you, Louie, and everyone at the gallery for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all. The occasion was really beautiful exhibition. Really glad to be here and to be able to speak about this time amidst so much of the work that was made at Auction. I also want to thank Nancy because none of this would be possible without her. She's such a wealth of information about this time. It's really a privilege to be able to, work on a dissertation project in this context. And I also want to give a special thank you to Jean Gerard. So much of what you're going to see today comes from Kanemitsu Archive. She's just, she's made it a thing. It's an archive because of her. And so many community members who have volunteered a long time. And yeah, it's made it possible for researchers like me to have access to, so much material. So with that, I get started. I'm just going to introduce myself now. So what I'm going to talk about today is, how to think about Kanemitsu and his work and traction in the context of downtown Los Angeles in the late 20th century, in the 80s and 90s. The way that I read his work and what constitutes his work is really influenced by the broader context. And one of the things that I just find endlessly fascinating about him is, how many histories and places and art movements and people you have to know about in order to even get a beginning of an understanding of him and his life and his artwork. And so I'm going to attempt today to bring together a few threads of histories that I think are not often talked about together, but are Kanemitsu allows us to do that, and it's necessary to do that in order to understand his work and his impact on Los Angeles. So with that, I'm going to start with a quote on one of his quotes. In 1988, Nancy interviewed Kanemitsu for Tozai Times, a Japanese American newspaper that was active in the 80s and 90s. And when asked about living in Little Tokyo, and he referred to the neighborhood that Traction was in as Little Tokyo, he referenced staying in Los Angeles briefly when he was a much younger man. He said, "I like to look out this window, down at the children playing at Maryknoll," which is a Japanese Catholic church. "When I was young, I was staying there at the Chukoku Hotel. I recycled back to Little Tokyo again. I feel like a bird that has come back to the nest. My past memories of when I was young come back every now and then." So, I think memory and diasporic memory is, is how I like to think about his work. I don't have time to get into his really interesting biography, but he moved back and forth between the United States and Japan several times, so he was in Korea. And those moves were just one of the many influences on how he saw the world, how he made art, and how he made community. And I'm going to talk about this painting, which is on view here, and I hope that you'll go look at it in the other room if you haven't had a chance. But it really speaks to how I'm trying to memory and diaspora in place in his work. So, across his very extensive body of work, but especially starting with the move to California in the 1960s, he titled artworks after specific places, like Salt Lake, Berkeley, Hiroshima, Morning, Santa Monica, as well as natural elements like the Pacific series, which his major bodies of work towards the end of his life. And you see examples of both those things in his show today. He called them inner sweeps and major sweeps. And again, they're part of his, what I think of as the California moment of his practice. And his friend, curator, and critic, Nordland, described his process of painting the natural world. He would visit the mountains or the ocean near Los Angeles. He wouldn't take any notes or sketches. He would come back with impressions, and these impressions would develop over time, and they take like weeks or months to be fully formed. And we see that in a lot of his work. Nature is a really, really essential way to read his paintings. But this one is called Traction Avenue. It's watercolor on washi paper, and he also titled paintings after places that were domestic sites. And this one, I was just so struck on after seeing this and then rereading Just Like Sunshine, Just Like Moon, which is an account of his early childhood and its influences on how he became an artist. And let me just read a little bit. That, to me, I want my work to be like life. Everything that is different or opposite to be in balance, like yin and yang, negative and positive, day and night. I want to be just like sunshine, like moon. I do have memories from my childhood that I sometimes think of when I paint. As a child, I knew a particular thing well, the sunset. And all over our village, outside our own house too, persimmon grew with beautiful orange and red fruit. The crows would gather and come down under the trees to eat persimmon at sundown. The orange, pink, red sunset and the black crows flying all over, the green leaves and the fruit. I have never forgotten that special color combination. Today, I remember those childhood times just like yesterday. That has helped me with my painting. My memories of the metamorphosis of nature, to me, that is the most beautiful thing of all. Constantly, the world about me is changing. Now, I somehow may subconsciously remember that when I do. I let the painting change until it has a certain mood, and then I feel finished with it. So, I look at this painting and I think about him painting it in 89, 90, the last years of his life, and what would be his last studio in downtown Los Angeles, painting up that last studio, but remembering that Hiroshima countryside of his childhood, the orange, pink, red sunset, and the black crows flying all over, the green leaves and the fruit, that special color. And so, again, I really encourage you to go see the real thing. It's just right there. But in memory and in his artwork, these impressions of places and what he took away from them become crystallized. And to me, they are a vehicle of understanding, how he made his work, how he made places, how he made communities through these collapsing of different kinds of cultural influences. And so, for that reason, when I think about his artistic practices, I'm thinking about, of course, his painting and his studying and his lithography practice, but also all the different ways that he made community. He brought people together, and he did that, everywhere that he lived, everywhere that he worked. But the one that he made at Traction was really special, and that's what I want to contextualize today. And, sorry, another quote for you. This is the last one. June Wang, his very dear friend and artist, wrote an essay after his death, and in it she said, gesture, meaning, and feeling are a single force for Kanemitsu. They activate the physical space in which he works and lives. In his art making, as in his life, he's an entity. No parts are missing, no parts are extra. So again, those artistic practices, like everything he did, imbued his paintings and his artworks and his communities with this energy, with these impressions of the places that he knew. So, yeah, this is great photo. So this is Traction, viewed from the outside. He moved into Traction in the early 80s. Before that, he was living in Koreatown on Veranda Street. He was renting 2 apartments. One was with a family, one was his studio. So moving here, he had much more space, much bigger space to work in. And at that time, there were many artists who were moving into this part of downtown LA, which had been pretty much emptied out after the warehouse and processing industry moved out over the course of the 1900s. And artists are always looking for cheap places to work, so they ended up there. But what's really important to remember with Traction is that, yes, they were artists. They were looking for places to work that was affordable to live there. It's like, but they also had, like a culturally specific relationship to the neighborhood, and that differentiates them, in my view, from many of the other artists at the time who were moving there and didn't have that same connection to the history and didn't have the same awareness of all of the things that contributed to making these downtown Los Angeles neighborhoods what they were then and what they were today. So this is a map that the city of LA made of some of the historic cultural districts. So you see that Little Tokyo and New York City are right next to each other. I put a little star for 800 fractions. And Little Tokyo, as we see it on this map and as it is today, is a quarter of its size of its head. There are many reasons for why it shrunk so drastically. And again, I am trying to put together many different histories right now, so I'm not going to go into great detail about any of them, but please feel free to ask questions. But basically there are different waves of displacement and gentrification in Little Tokyo. Of course, there's World War II and incarceration. There's a community redevelopment period when neighborhoods where working class, poor people of color were living that were designated as urban white, and they were marked for redevelopment. And then so that's sort of what sets the stage for the period when Kanemitsu and other artists moved into the Traction. And at the same time, Japanese Americans were moving out of Little Tokyo. Little Tokyo was becoming a neighborhood that wasn't a residential neighborhood for Japanese Americans. It was becoming something that had more symbolic significance and more memory of Little Tokyo as a Japanese American neighborhood, but sort of keeping it intact. So again, to me, that makes Kanemitsu as a Japanese American artist who moved into Traction in the 80s, going against the sort of residential trends of other Japanese Americans, makes them distinct from other artists, and it makes them distinct from the mainstream Japanese American community. And so that was the 80s. The city of LA passed artist in residence ordinance in 1981 that legalized what had been an illegal informal practice of artists moving into formal industrial spaces. And this is something that Kanemitsu knew from New York, because he lived, the artist lifestyle already there. So it's, kind of practical knowledge that he brought in moving into what's now the Arts District, and then, moving there was also influenced by his role as a teacher, because many of his students from the different art schools in Los Angeles he taught at were beginning to move into the neighborhood as well. The last thing I'll say about this period, it was also the 80s, the kind of like economic prosperity in Japan, the bubble period, and there was a lot of Japanese investment in downtown LA, which is something that's very well historicized in urban history, but what's much less known is the concurrent influx of Japanese artists to LA at the same time. With that economic prosperity, there are more young artists who are looking to, come be part of the art world in Los Angeles. They enrolled in the art schools here, or found other ways to get to LA. And Kanemitsu was known in Japan. He had been in the United States for a long time. He had been part of, many art movements. He was a successful Japanese artist living in the United States. So young artists would ask to be introduced to him, or otherwise connected to him, and he would do a lot to help facilitate their arrival in LA. He would connect them with people. Some of them would stay at the 800 Traction. Others moved into other buildings in the neighborhood. Some of them showed at the gallery, which I will talk about shortly. So that's just another way that, there are all these really big things going on in the world as it's being globalized, as Los Angeles is being developed. But, people are always the ones who are making it happen, and I think Kanemitsu was really, in a way that has not been recognized, a force of what shaped the cultural landscape of downtown during that period. And just a couple other contextual things. So at the same time, during this period of urban development, cultural institutions were being, there was investment in cultural institutions, kind of announced that Los Angeles was a world-class city. So we got a lot of our major art museums, including MoCA, which you can sort of see in the photo on the left. The Japanese American National Museum is not yet there. The federal building is being built, and there's still a lot of empty lots. And then on the right, you can see one of the Japanese temples in the Arts District. And I just love these photos because it really gives a sense of how much rapid change was happening in the neighborhood at that time, and how many different forces and histories and sort of desires were being collapsed into each other. And that is part of what 800 Traction was influenced by, but also what 800 Traction influenced. So, again, so many different histories and cultures colliding there. On the left is the LA Times magazine coverage of the East West Tea Party that Nancy and Kanemitsu hosted at 800 Traction. Food, and they did more than just make art there. They did more than just show art there. They really created a place for people to come together. They created a place for culture in a really broad sense. Sitting across from Nancy is Robert Horry, who on several occasions did tea ceremony. He studied tea ceremony. He's now, associate director of cultural programs at the Huntington. He's just one of the many young Japanese Americans who were able to, try out their creative practice at 800 Traction, to participate in, a new version of Japanese American culture, a new version of being an artist in LA, and And that's something that, you know, Nancy and Kanemitsu did very well. That's one, you know, what they created in refraction. And then on the right, Kanemitsu is standing with the Maryknoll, the owner of the infamous Owl's Bar, right across the street. You know, that's a building with its own, like, very rich history, which again, you know, we could get into, but, you know, just a sense of some of the things that came together at this building. And Nancy and Kanemitsu ran gallery at 800 Times. So gallery 4, so on the 4th floor, and they founded it with 2 galleries from Japan, Uyemura and Uyemura, respectively based in Osaka and Nagoya. And they showed, you know, Japanese and Japanese American artists, but also, you know, people, you know, artists who were established in the career, emerging in LA. I think this invitation gives a sense of how many different spheres of cultural life and artistic practices they brought together. I think some people will recognize some names from, you know, their own like experiences, and others will recognize totally different ones. And it's just, you know, a glimpse of, you know, how special their program is, how reflective it was of their creative community, their like many creative communities. So here, Nancy Kanemitsu with Yamaki and Rita and Emerson Wolfer in front of Wolfer's work. I don't know the name. Yeah, there's always the beer can and the cigarette. This is also just a set of photos that I really love. It speaks to, you know, how special this place was. On the left, there's a group of priests from Zen Shugi, Buddhist temple, including Shingo Honda, who's also an artist. And then on the right, there's Kanemitsu and Yamaki again, and standing by himself off to the right is Richard Gerardo, who also lived in Deep Under Traction, who's, you know, one of the most important printmakers in LA, who brought this, you know, a totally different cultural history and community into Deep Under Traction. And then, you know, like I said, young Japanese Americans really were able to kind of try things out and, you know, become artists at this place. They always had music at their openings. On the left, there's Taiji Miyagawa, bass, Scott Nagatani on keyboards. And then on the right, there is Neko Gramer, who is an artist as well, and then Bruce Yamamoto, who also lived at and then for another history that I wish that I could get, you know, more into today, Kanemitsu's son, Paul, lived at Deep Traction starting from when he was a teenager. And I believe that he was the only teenager who lived in the arts district for a long time. And he and his friends were, you know, they were the East LA like graffiti movement that happened in the 80s and 90s. And, you know, so you had all these, you know, what they called at the time spray can artists who were experiencing this creative community, seeing gallery shows, seeing professional artists for the first time. And many of them have gone on to be artists. And so Paul was able to curate some shows at Gallery 4. So he's there in the middle, and to the right is Guy Kanemitsu. So, you know, all of these things that came together that, you know, planted the seeds for what is still the cultural landscape of Los Angeles today, that to me is the lasting impact of these domestic practices at gentrification and attraction. All of those histories to me are embedded in the work here. They're part of the impressions of this place. And I'm really, again, grateful that I have access to these stories and to these materials because, when you walk through the arts district today, you don't see traces of this history. You would never know that any of this happened. And so if, we can all take this work, this artist and this building as sort of a vehicle for remembering that there's so many people who have made the places that we live and work in today, and there's so many reasons why they ended up in the places they did, that, bring together lots of different histories that, remind us that art is not separated from, macroeconomics or the real estate industry. That's what I so thank you so much. Here's one more. It doesn't matter. Daniel Day Martinez, who also lived at the building, took this photo.
What's the year of the last year of traction?
So Kanemitsu passed away in 1992, but they were evicted in 2018. So that's when the last, the artists who were still living there moved out, and when all of his work and all of his archives had to be moved out of the building. It's a whole other story. Yeah. Yes.
I really appreciate your thoughtful perspective of what you presented today. And just as a note, I met Nancy in the transition of the eviction and did not know this whole other backstory. And so when we talk about preserving or appreciating that, how do we do that? Or what ideas?
What we're doing today,
Yeah, for starters, because it's so rich, it's so useful, just from what we see today as well as the past. It's really a great vehicle of your perspective on what else. I appreciate that.
Well, I have ideas, so we can talk about it, yeah.
Thank you all for that amazing talk. Sorry we came in a little late, the parking situation is hard up there. But what I thought was really beautiful, and actually it's interesting because I was with Bruce Yanimoto yesterday, so seeing that was really special. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the connections you have between your research in both art history, but also I know you're very involved in the community organizing that's currently happening in Little Tokyo, and how you see those practices sort of influencing each other, because you are really preserving the culture and thinking about these ways of remembering both an art historian's perspective, but also community organizing.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually really, why I'm doing this project. I got involved during the eviction struggle, and what really got me hooked was the historic cultural monument process. So the developer who bought the building and who was evicting everybody applied for historic cultural monument status, which is a city program that gives a lot of tax rates to developers. It's a financial incentive to develop historic buildings. But because they were evicting the artists, it was not in their interest to recognize them at all. So they hired a consultant to put together their application that made the case for the historic cultural significance based only on the manufacturing history and the architectural history. And they specifically said in their report that there was no connection to Japanese Americans and that the history of artists in the arts district was too much of a recent past to count as history. And seeing that just really, shows me how important art and culture and cultural narratives are to how the city functions and how it actually is built and constructed and operated. Because if you write a cultural narrative that completely erases someone, that is going to erase them out of physical space. It's not just writing something on a piece of paper. Because they did that, they had to move, and the arts district has been emptied of this history. So for me, preserving these histories and thinking about how artists have lived in this city has everything to do, is an active project.
Did they end up getting historic cultural monument status, and what's going on at the building today?
So they did get it, and it's been sold several times. The building's in terrible shape. It's graffiti and broken windows. They're supposed to maintain the physical integrity of the building. If they get that status, they have it. And I think it's up for a bank sale now. So it's just been empty since 2018.
I may have missed this because I missed the beginning, but I think Kanemitsu could be said that he helped spur the growth and development of the arts district. Is there any person or event that can be pointed at to say this sparked the beginning of the arts district itself?
I don't think it could ever just be one person who, maybe. I don't think that trying to make the case of him being like the first person to do something in the arts district is what really captures what was so special about what he did. I think that what to me is most significant is how he really is a force for a different kind of cultural strain or a different set of cultural activities in the arts district that made it an especially vibrant and diverse place. And he brought so much with him that from his years in New York, from his years in Europe, from his connections to Japan, from his connections to the Japanese American community, and that really unique. So even if he wasn't the first artist to live in the neighborhood, he certainly had a unique connection to it, partly because of the connection to Little Tokyo, but also so much more.
So are you going to be publishing this as a book in the future, and how will we be able to know that?
I have to finish writing my dissertation first, but that's the goal. That's the plan. And in however many years that happens, I will find a way to let that go. Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to say I really appreciate that you brought out Kanemitsu's own description of what he saw and what he was trying to share with others, and putting those things on canvases, and also the way Jim Wayne recognized that special ability that he had. And I wondered if he had this sort of charisma
I didn't know him, so I don't really know, but he didn't seem like super outgoing activist, bring people together, but maybe by example, people were drawn to him. And anyway, I just love how you describe that, and I hope that since we can't ask him now, if more of that sort of thing can be drawn out, out of the archive or by talking to people who do it or something.
Yeah, I do not know him either. I was pretty much when he died. So I'm also putting together this picture of him through everything that I'm reading, through talking to so many people that knew him. Everyone has a story. The number of crazy Kanemitsu stories there are. It's really something. And that is giving me a picture of him. But it's always going to just be this like imagined version that I have.
I wondered since Nancy is here, I didn't know if you would like to tell us
That time period.
during that time.
Yeah, there's really so much. We were talking about this earlier. I think Ana did a really great job in just sort of concisely putting together some of the essence of Gallery 4 and Traction Avenue and Kanemitsu. If you talk to everybody that has known Kanemitsu, they always have a story. Somebody has some story, and the stories are what's really fascinating. And you see it in his work. He was a very powerful personality person. There was a certain spirit or energy that she just came out of him, and that was where this, I think, this attraction and drew people to him. So that's why there were always people around, and he always found himself in some kind of creative circle of people. That's how his history puts him in all these different places where all these creatives are. And then he was always painting, he was always creating, drawing, doing prints, something, always, He did that before anything else. He did take care of his kids to a certain degree. He did take care of his students, to a degree. But his first and foremost was his art. He just painted. And he painted and painted and painted, and the pictures that you see and the slides that Ana picked, typically that's what the studio looked like, and he'd get really upset. He sort of got into his space because it was for his work, and he didn't want all this other stuff around him. And he was very particular about his tools. He would take care of your brushes, and the canvases were made in a special place, and by some of his students, Anyway, so, and he was very supportive of all of his students, supportive of women artists of color, especially Japanese, because he spoke Japanese, so he had this rapport with everybody that came from Japan. So during the boom time, the bubble time, a lot of the Japanese people that were in LA for business, they would gravitate to him, especially the artists were always. So there was a vibrant group of Japanese American and Japanese artists in that area. And I see a little bit of it happening again now, but at that time, it was really fun. It was really a lot of fun. He drank a lot, he smoked a lot. If you saw that, there's a can of beer and a cigarette in his hand all the time. I went to eat a lot of sushi with it. That was when sushi bars were not as prevalent as now, but we had great sushi.
With the artists coming in the 80s, the sushi chefs came too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Nancy, because I know you're an artist as well.
Oh, I had to stand back. I had a little corner in the studio, but it was not as much as his, you know. And I did, my art was a little bit different, so it didn't sort of come into this realm, you know. And then he was a teacher, he was my teacher, and then he was also a mentor to so many, and he has shown internationally and on the East Coast in New York. I mean, you know, so as a younger artist, you're sort of in awe of that, and especially being Japanese American, you know, it's like women are sort of in the back, and you know, you would raise up the males and the artists and the teachers. So, you know, that's sort of how I evolved.
I imagine that you organized or quietly or structured many of these events, but I just conjecture.
I think I
You're
just
too artistic to do the events themselves.
naturally sort of did that. But, you know, I mean, and the people that are here today, it's really cool. Sandy Gooch I used to work for Mrs. Gooch's Markets, and we had a whole floor, 2 floors of decor items, because we would go and do the interiors of all the markets, and we would hire art students and artists in the area that needed a job. So, you know, that's part of that history of that building.
And they would, for instance, decorate the window in the Beverly Hills, Mrs. Gooch's store, for different periods. And I remember Christmas, there were little bears and a little skiing down the ski slope and so forth. And year after year, we won first prize. And here's Mike Kanemitsu, a famous artist who was there working with the art students and Nancy to do that. And there was no hierarchy as such. Everybody was a team working to complete a project that had been designed and created. And Nancy really oversaw all of that in her own quiet, spiritual manner.
And Jeff is here, Jeff
Yeah.
Phillips.
And
And
this
he
all,
was one of our #1 worker bees.
and all of this happened after 9 p.m. at night. And I remember Mike standing there looking at it as an orchestra conductor with all of his instruments, which are his students, and everybody's doing it. And he's having a final look at it and making a few comments, and everyone was waiting for him to kind of say, okay, it's done. But it was, I just wanted to say one thing as seeing Mike, spending a lot of time with him. What I noticed about him, he was like a sponge. He was bringing in things from everybody around him to enrich himself. And that was part of his creative review that helped, I think, him also transfer all of that to his art. And so, in his art, I think there's a little bit of everybody in there.
Nancy, can you, I never thought to ask you this, but can you talk a little bit about how you and Mike put Gallery 4 together, and like how and why? And I mean, it's not like you weren't busy doing other things.
How it actually started,
Yeah.
you know, I could give you generally how it started. It was during that bubble time, and Mr. Yamaki came, and I'm not sure the original contact, how that all happened. Do you know? I don't know if it was her dad. I don't know. There were connections in Japan that Kanemitsu had, and then they must have looked him up. So Mr. Yamaki came, and then he brought Mr. Morita, who was from Nagoya, and they had both galleries, successful, and they had money, and then they came, they saw the space, they saw the neighborhood, and they thought, this is cool, we'll open a gallery. So then they needed people to help on this end, and of course, you know, Kanemitsu was there, and then of course, well, Nancy can do all the like, right? Yeah, so then I had to like help put this all together, and you know, we got the space, and you know, it just sort of evolved quickly.
Well, the first thing is the space became available, which triggered because the space was not always available in that building.
That's true.
And so then the thought was to see maybe that's how we could utilize it. And I think the energy went out and said, hey, we could possibly do this here, and artists in residence and all that other stuff. So you know, I think that's how some of this all happened.
Yeah, that's sort of true. A space would come available, and I might say, Sandy, we need this space and it's open, you know, or that gallery space was there. So Mike was very good at like finagling stuff. And so he would say, well, you know, we could use this space and open this gallery, and then we'll do shows in Japan and Japanese artists here. And the two gallerists from Japan, they had some money to spend. So we were like happy to like help them spend the money. And then we knew how to create the gallery. We knew how to run it. We knew how to get the artists. We knew how to do all of that stuff. So, and then they would bring some staff once in a while, and so they would do the shows and, you know, do the exhibitions. So it was this interchange all the time, which was really nice. It was a really good time.
So where do you remember where did the gallery tour actually start?
On 1990.
That's what it says on. That's right. Yeah. I have to do this something.
Okay.
That's
That's why we have archives.
I know. I've looked at that card 100 times.
I know.
Yeah. But you know, I've seen, I remember distinctly the pictures like Studio Maki coming, and it was like, oh, that's when they came, but I never really understood.
Yeah.
the significance.
So I think he must have come at least once or twice before we actually opened that gallery space. So if it opened in 90, then maybe the year before we actually started preparations or talks about doing it.
I know there are refreshments, so maybe we can, you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Such a wonderful.